bit dirty, isn't it?
Disappointing.
It is a bit, yeah. Someone needs to sweep up that dust there.
Tough crowd.
Yeah. Tough crowd, I tell you.
Oh, we'll have that chat later on this hour. Meanwhile, Facebook blindsided the government and many of us this week, blocking Australian news from its platform in response to a government plan to make the social media giant pay Australian publishers for content it accesses.
Now, negotiations are ongoing between Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Let's now bring in our poly panel, and we're now joined by Liberal MP Jason Falinski. We're also joined by Linda Burney, who is the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on this Saturday morning. Jason Falinski, if I could start with you. We just heard there are negotiations apparently still taking place between Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and Mark Zuckerberg. But obviously, from Facebook's actions, it seems that Australia is just small change to Facebook.
Look, if that's the case, Fazia, then we can live without them. I mean, the fact of the matter is that what Facebook tried to do this week was to tell the Parliament of Australia that Australia is not run by the people of Australia. It can be run by big tech out of the United States. And we're not going to back down on this. What is at principle here, what is at stake here, is just very clear that Facebook should pay for the content produced by other people. It's been a principle encoded in our law ever since it was created, that people have intellectual property rights for what they produce. Now, if Facebook thinks that it can continue to use the intellectual property of others without paying anything for that, then I'm sure Australians would prefer to use other social media platforms than continue to deal with Facebook. And further to all of that, we are not going to back down. We represent the people of Australia, not big tech.
Linda, as Fazia said, the Treasurer is working out a call with Mark Zuckerberg on this, and the government's trying to reach some sort of compromise as the media bargaining code heads to the Senate. Does Labor support the government's efforts on this?
Labor is as cross as the government with Facebook. I mean, I think what this says, Joe, is that Facebook has something like 2.8 billion active users. Australia is only 25 million. And they are huge, they're powerful, and they carried out their threat. We hope that the government continues to negotiate and find a resolution to this, because there are real sufferers in this, and that's, of course, the inadvertent, according to Facebook, perhaps not very careful taking down of sites like 1-800-RESPECT, of hospital vaccine rollouts of Aboriginal organisations, and particularly small publishers that rely on Facebook for their content. Now, that's where the real pain is.
We want to move on now to another piece of news that really made the headlines, and this is, surrounding Burney Higgins, of course, making allegations of rape having occurred in Parliament House. There has been a lot of criticism over how the alleged victim, the perpetrator, and the incident itself was handled in Parliament House, and I think a lot of Australians were very shocked that it actually happened in the seat of government as well. Much has been discussed as to who knew what and when. I wonder, though, how much priority has been given to the victim herself, Burney Higgins. I mean, Jason Falinski, you are the father to a beautiful daughter. As a father, were you satisfied with how this was handled?
No, I wasn't, Fazia. But it's not as a father that I wasn't satisfied. It was as a human being. All of us expect certain levels of respect from other human beings, and our laws are there to protect each of us and to assert our rights. I think that what happened this week was completely and utterly distressing. The fact of the matter is that this is not just a conversation that is taking place in Parliament. It's taking place. A lot of workplaces have had to deal with this issue, but you are right. This should not be happening in the seat of government. We should be the exemplar. We should be setting the standard for others to follow. And unfortunately and sadly, that did not happen 2 years ago. And there's a lot that all of us have learnt from this. I think that a lot of us turn up in Parliament. I mean, I had the benefit of working and managing people in a large corporate, so I got a lot of training, an HR department and assistance in terms of I've never had to deal with this situation, thankfully. But if that ever occurred, I knew that I had a lot of support to do so. When I ran my own business, you take these things very seriously because you understand that both legally and morally it is your duty to ensure that there is a safe workplace. And so you really get on top of that. A lot of people don't arrive in Parliament with that experience. And I think that is one of the big things to come out of this, that there needs to be greater awareness of this, greater structural capacity for members of Parliament to rely on, and more availability of training so that we can, when these incidents occur, and of course the thing that you want to get to is where these incidents never occur, we are able to better deal with that so that everyone feels safer and looked after. And unfortunately in this situation that didn't occur.
Linda, this week former Prime Minister Julia Gillard said that she was horrified by the incident and the aftermath. We heard from former Liberal Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. He said that Parliament thrives on the disrespect of women and compared it to the corporate culture of the 1970s. We also heard from former Liberal MP Julia Banks, who said that the Liberal Party has an entrenched culture of anti-women, although we do know that this is not just a problem for one party. And we had Justin Flinsky there speaking about structural change and training that needs to happen. What might that look like in Parliament House?
The important thing is that the culture that exists in Parliament House has to change. And I think the Prime Minister's office has some explaining to do in terms of contradiction on timelines. And clearly there is a power imbalance that exists in Parliament House. And I think that's what we've seen play out. It was handled appallingly, and Britney has been incredibly brave in coming forward. To go directly to your question, the independent inquiry that is going to take place, apart from the other two inquiries that the Prime Minister has announced, has to go to looking, as Jason has said, at the structures and the reporting frameworks within Parliament House. Now, you can have the best reporting frameworks and policies on paper, but unless people know about them, unless people understand that this is what you do if there is a serious incident like this, then they're not worth the paper they're written on. So Parliament House, within its HR department, within its parliamentary services, within security, needs to look at the way in which they handle things. But this took place in the ministerial wing of Parliament House. At least two ministers were aware of it. The Prime Minister says he became aware of it last Friday. Those are the issues that need looking at. What is our responsibility as members? We are the employers. What is the responsibility of the Parliament, and what is the responsibility of the various mechanisms within Parliament? They are the things that need addressing.
I think we're all in agreement that this isn't just the problem of one party or just the problem in Canberra. It is right across the spectrum of all workplaces, definitely. But Jason Flinsky, this happened under the watch of the Liberal Party. This happened in a Liberal Party member's office. At the same time, we now have allegations that of a Craig Kelly aide who now has an AVO against him, and he's also facing several allegations of inappropriate behaviour towards women, and yet he's still able to continue in this particular position. Does the Liberal Party have a problem in terms of addressing inappropriate attitudes or behaviour towards women?
Fazia, I don't, and I don't believe the overwhelming majority of my colleagues, if not all of them, have a problem with that. Of course, we want to ensure that women, that all people, women especially, are looked after and are respected, not only in the workplace but in the community at large. And we will do whatever it takes to ensure that that is the case. I don't think that it is fair to say that we have not done as much as we can. There is more that we need to do. This incident proves that. There is no doubt about it. And we will do those things. The Prime Minister has been incredibly strong about this. As soon as he had a chance to look at the tape and the interviews and get his head around the situation that had occurred with Brittany Higgins, he came out the very next day and made I felt a very powerful statement about how serious the party and the government was about this. There are a number of inquiries, and I think and he's encouraged all parties to be part of that. There's a bipartisan one as well. Can we do better? Absolutely, we can do better. Do we need to be setting the standard? Absolutely, we need to be setting the standard, and that's what we will endeavour to do. Will we get it right along the way? We'll make mistakes, but we are going to do this.
Linda, there are also reports in the Australian newspaper this morning that a second woman has come forward to allege that she was sexually assaulted late last year by that same Morrison government advisor. And we saw in a statement from Brittany Higgins yesterday, she was talking about there being few protections and not reporting mechanisms and resources available for staff in Parliament House. And we have talked in this discussion about structural change that needs to take place. But I also wonder about the cultural change that needs to take place in order for people to feel free to pursue whatever structural changes we see, to make sure that they are listened to and that they don't feel like their job is under threat if they do pursue that.
That is, I think, part of the crux of what we're talking about here. Brittany has clearly said, and she should be absolutely believed, that she felt she had to make a decision between her job and the party and whether or not she pursued justice. Now, people should not have to be in a position where that's a decision, and I just hope that this is not covered up. I hope that the reports or the investigations are proper and independent investigations, because if they are not, we will see a repeat of this. And the fact that it is in Parliament House, the seat of government where this particular thing took place, is what has shocked people. And the culture of Parliament, remembering that there's 5,000 people in there on any given day. It is a big workplace. It is a complex workplace. It is a highly stressful workplace. But this should be an area where young women in particular feel that they can have a future, feel that they can have a career, and they should not be put in a position where they have to decide between those things.
Jason Falinsky, we want to give you the last say in this conversation, of course. You've said some very admirable things as a politician, and very much expected as well. Yes, we can do better. We need to do better. We need to learn from here. We need to move on, and we need to make it a better, safer place for anyone to work in Parliament House. If you were in charge, what would you change immediately?
Well, Fazia, can I firstly say thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I totally agree with what Linda just said. No one should be in the situation where they have to make a choice between their career and reporting an assault. So that is one thing that definitely needs to change. But I think what we can learn from the private sector is what we should bring to play in Parliament House. And those are mandatory training for all managers, including parliamentarians. I think that we also need to have better structures of reporting, better support for employees and employers, because a lot of people come to Parliament without any idea what it is that they need to do in those circumstances. And I think that was part of the problem here. And we need better support, especially for people who are victims of these sorts of assaults, so that they can get the help that they need, so that they feel like they can make the reports that they need to make and that they're supported in the decisions that they make. They're the sort of three top things that I would say, but there are people like Celia Hammond, Fiona Martin, Katie Allen on our side, and I know Labor has a similar inquiry or work going on as well, who are experts in these areas, who are going through some of those suggestions, and hopefully well, I know that they will come back with some very practical and meaningful suggestions for the Parliament to.
Well, Australia is waiting and watching. Thank you to both of you to join us on Weekend Breakfast this Saturday morning. Jason Falinsky and Linda Burney.
Thanks, Fazia. And Joe.